What I want to talk today about is, I was asked actually to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is the relationship between the Hewlett-Packard Company and the Debian project. This is something that I have been, sort of in the center of or acting as part of the connection for quite a while. Who am I and why am I here to talk about this? Well, I've been around for a while. I made my first contribution to what we now call the free software community sometime around 1979. It was a little piece of assembly language for a long forgotten, strange little microprocessor board that got published in a newsletter in Canada. I discovered Unix when I arrived in Pittsburgh to attend Carnegie Mellon University in 1982. And that was the era of Berkeley 4.1 running on Vaxxon. There seemed to be a thing at CMU at the time that if you started a new research project, you'd get a grant and buy a Vax. And so they were all over the place. So I'd done all sorts of interesting computer-related things for a long time before I discovered Linux and in particular the Debian project. That happened sometime around 1995. My real focus over the years has been on software portability within the Debian project. I had a lot to do with getting the ports for Alpha and Spark and ARM, and more recently HPPA, or PA-RISC as it's called, and IA64, which is the architecture for the Itanium processor family, included in the Debian distribution. I've also done some interesting infrastructure things over time. A very long time ago, I built the first master.debian.org and sort of squirreled it away on an HP network for a while without anybody really knowing about it. And there have been some other major things that have happened in the Debian project over time, from the implementation of package pools and more recently the custom Debian distribution work, which I used to call creating flavors of Debian. There are things I've contributed ideas to. I served as Debian project leader for a year, and I'm one of the participants in this thing that we're trying as an experiment this time around called the DPL team. In fact, I guess we have everyone who's participating in that team except Steve Lankasek present here in Helsinki or on the way. And so you'll have a chance to beat us up in person if you'd like. I've also been on the board of SPI for a little over a year, I guess, and had served as an advisor to the SPI board for a while before that. For those of you who don't know, SPI is the nonprofit corporation that's organized in the United States to act as the financial and legal umbrella for Debian and some other interesting open source projects. From the HP side, I've been an employee of HP or its spinoff Agilent Technologies since 1986. Though for a very long time I worked in the older test and measurement part of HP, and it wasn't until I was invited to leave Agilent and go back to work for HP in 2001 that I actually started working on Linux-related things as part of my official day job. And for the last couple of years I've been serving as the Chief Technology Officer for all of HP's open source and Linux activities. In that capacity I report to a Vice President whose title is HP VP Linux, among other things. So what do I want to do today? Well, HP was one of Debian's earliest, and I think remains one of Debian's strongest corporate sponsors. And what I really want to talk about is what HP gets in return for that. There are a few other things that I'll pick up along the way. It's impossible to talk about this without talking a little bit about HP and the whole concept of community development and how we think about that and how we try to participate. I'll tell you the sort of funny story or the interesting sequence of events that led to HP having sort of a significant development relationship with Debian, talk a little bit about some of the things it's enabled and some of the ongoing activities. Now if you go to HP marketing pitches about Linux, this is one of the sort of cute standard slides that gets thrown up. We have this whole marketing motto thing about delivering open source and Linux for the real world. And if you look at this, there's all sorts of things that get wrapped up in that, and some of them matter to those of you that are doing Debian things and some don't. The part that I really focus on a lot is this middle pinkish kind of box where we talk about a commitment to open industry standards, not proprietary architectures, maximizing the value of vendor and partner independence, and this notion of trying to have a leadership role in the open source community to help preserve the freeness of Linux in the long term. And this is something that our marketing guys happily put up in front of real customers all the time. So it's not just when Bdale goes and waves slides around. This is a strategy that seems to be working pretty well. This is my only other quote-unquote marketing slide that I'll throw at you. While some of our competitors talk a lot about Linux and talk about how much money they spend trying to contribute to and support Linux, from a business standpoint, we're actually very happy with the results we've seen. And when we talk about the Linux attributable revenue that HP is receiving as a consequence of our participation in Debian and the larger open source and Linux community, we're talking about numbers in the range of multiple billions of dollars per year, and yes, that's billions with a B. So this is big business now. It's not a hobby anymore, if it ever was, for a company like HP. And I think it's important to understand that so that when you think about the things that we do and the ways that we try to contribute, you understand that this really is, from a corporate perspective, all about generating value for our shareholders. But I don't think that that's incompatible in any kind of way with doing the right things in the open source space as well. So how do we get there? Well, we have this R&D approach that says that we really need to embrace Linux for what it is, a disruptive technology. When I say disruptive, what I mean is that I don't think there's a single business plan for any of the businesses that make up the Hewlett-Packard Company that doesn't have the word Linux in it somewhere. If you're building printers or other peripheral devices, you have to care about Linux device drivers, and you have to have a strategy for how you're either going to deliver those or explain why you're not delivering them. If you're building any kind of computer these days, some customer somewhere is going to ask you what your Linux support strategy is. It doesn't matter whether it's a good strategy or a bad strategy. You better be conscious about it and know what the answers are. And just across the board, there are places where we're embedding Linux technology in products. There are a couple of hundred products that HP ships today that have Linux in them that the people buying them don't know have Linux in them. It's just part of delivering value to our consumers. And this, in terms of the implications that this has for our R&D operations, you have to be careful not to presuppose that you know what the ultimate answers are, because we don't. We need to participate in and contribute to this ongoing evolutionary process and sort of ride along with what is happening in this space. We try to contribute in places that are going to make some kind of business difference or benefit for the company, but in the process do this by participating as a real citizen of the community, consistent with the community's values and behaviors, to deliver enterprise capabilities that matter to HP and HP's customers, and in the process work with various Linux distributions, including Debian, and various software vendors to deliver solutions that our customers will be excited about and be willing to give us huge amounts of money for. So it's popular when you start talking about the relationship between large corporate participants and the general open source community to raise all sorts of questions about, is this a good thing, and is this going to generate some kind of an uneven influence and so forth. The perspective that I have on it is that I think large companies can make important and valuable contributions to the open source community, but we have to be conscious of the fact that there are often conflicting expectations. As I've already mentioned, the first priority of a corporation is profit. It's all about generating return on the investments made by your shareholders when you're a public corporation. You may have a set of corporate values, as HP does, that includes community citizenship and various other well-meaning things, and those are all part of running a sort of morally acceptable corporation in the modern world, but all of those things have to be done in the context of good fiscal behavior on the part of the company on behalf of its shareholders. At the same time, the open source community is really focused on freedom. It's all about freedom, stupid. And this can sometimes lead to an interesting set of conflicts. For a successful partnership to occur, the corporation has to behave as a good citizen. It has to play by all the rules. It can't cut corners on license compliance. It can't take all the time without giving and all of those sorts of things. But at the same time, for corporate participation in this model to be successful, the community also has to figure out how to appreciate and incorporate the contributions that are being made by these corporate participants. If the corporations are behaving as good citizens and participating in the level playing field and the sort of development commons that exists in the community development model, that's not nearly as hard as it sounds, because if the company is behaving as a good citizen, then the things that it's doing are things that the community is probably going to be appreciative of anyway. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time talking about is this notion that even once we get to the point where the kernel really does all of the things that most users expect, and a Linux desktop kind of scratches all the itches that the average user has, it's going to continue to be important for us to participate in and to help to foster this community development model, because this is where all the goodness and where all the cool innovation is coming from.